brief video I'm going to make. This one perhaps is the most important in terms of understanding the homework. Let me go to the slide view again. Just as a reminder, as a starting point, GDP is consumption plus business investment in capacity for the future, plus government spending on purchase goods and services, and plus net exports, exports minus imports. So here's the challenge for the homework is selecting the right components from a list. So here's a number of economic measures, all of which are kind of important measures, but not all of these are components of GDP. There's a lot of overlapping and double counting and things that aren't counted, et cetera. And just as a reminder, here are the four categories of GDP that then add up to the total. And GDP measures the value in dollars or another currency of all the output produced in a country over a given period of time. So now what I'm going to do is just walk through each of these step by step and say yes or no, is it included in GDP and why or why not? And these are the same categories that are in the homework, just in a different order. So income earned by consumers, so that's our wages or salaries, that's not a purchase of output. That provides the capability of us to buy output, but that's not yet buying output. So that is not part of GDP. Consumer purchases, yes, this is consumption. This is when we go out and buy soap and buy a car or buy food or anything else. This is consumption. And like I said in the previous video, this is oftentimes the largest portion of GDP. Savings by consumers, that's what we do with the money that we don't spend on consumption. So we're not buying anything with that, we're putting it in the bank. And businesses will access that for their own investment, but that's not part of GDP when we just save it. Estimated value of household work by stay-at-home people, GDP does not count that. So if you have a house husband or a housewife who's doing a lot of work that is tremendously valuable to the family output, so to speak, it's not counted because nothing is produced and sold. The negative effects of consumption are not counted also. So yes, there are increased health costs associated with obesity, but those will be counted in measuring the output of healthcare. There's no estimate of positive or negative effects of anything produced and sold. There's also no measure of the black market, so that is not counted. Business revenue and business expenses are not counted because the business revenue, that's counted, that is money that they're getting from people buying their stuff, consumers, government, exports, but it's a better way to measure it by looking at people buying it, governments buying it, and people in other countries buying it. So we don't count business revenue. We don't count business expenses because they're paying us to work for them, etc., but it's not a purchase of final output. The same intermediate goods are not counted because you can't double count. And so the example there is the car radio that, yes, a company did produce that and sell it to a company, but the value of it in GDP is counted when the car is sold because the car company charges more for the car because it has the car radio in it. Investment by businesses in new capacity for growth. Yes, this is investment. This is the purchase by businesses of output, equipment, machines, etc. That is an integral part of GDP. And then, of course, government purchases of goods and services. Yes, you don't count when government takes in revenue in the form of taxes, but when they spend it on goods and services like defense spending or a tank, that is counted. Government transfer payments are not counted. This is taking money from one group and giving it to another by taxing and then having a program to do that. So, support for poor people, for example. It is counted as consumption when it's spent by those people. There's a typo there, but just taking it from one group and giving it to another, there's no purchase of goods and services associated with that, so that doesn't count as part of GDP. And then, of course, exports to other countries. Yes, this is the purchase of output produced here, which is what we're measuring, by people and businesses in other countries. And we have to remove imports because this is the purchase of output produced from other countries by people in this country, which otherwise would be incorrectly included in consumption or investment. So we would be sort of like falsely attributing stuff made elsewhere to stuff made here. So now let's just walk through this list and say, yes, well, consumption of 40, yes, that's part of GDP. Investment by businesses of 10, that's part of GDP. Government purchases of goods and services, 12, that's part of GDP. Exports count, that's 4. And we have to subtract imports. So in this case, this country has a trade deficit of -1 because we subtract imports from exports. And then we add that up and we get 61. So it's 40 plus 10 is 50 plus 12 is 62 minus 1 is 61. And that's GDP, which measures the value in dollars or another currency of all the output produced in a country over a given period of time. This list is the same list that's in the homework. The order of these are different, so you do have to kind of parse through it, but I hope this is helpful in understanding the concepts involved. And that's it.